The meeting's been opened.
Great. Okay, ready to go, James?
Yes,
All
sir.
right.
The attendees are joining.
Okay, very good. Well, good morning. Want to call to order the January 26, 2022 meeting of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Conservancy. I want to welcome all who are joining us this morning, colleagues, board members, staff, and obviously members of the public and some of the presenters on some of the items. So we welcome you all. We're off to a good start in the new year and already almost a month in. So with that, then call this meeting to order and would ask our board clerk to call the roll to establish a quorum, and then ask Campbell if there's any other introductions we want to make, and we'll get started with our order of business here.
Excellent. Chair Natoli.
Here.
Vice Chair Matsumoto.
Here.
Supervisor Mitchoff.
Here.
Supervisor Miller. Not yet. Supervisor Mashburn. I saw your name. There you are. Here. Okay. You're on mute, just so you know. Supervisor Provenza. Oh, I don't see Jim yet. Gail Miller. Board Member Miller.
Here. I'm here.
Yay! Thank you.
I found my way. Thanks,
And
James.
again, sorry about that. Brian Cash, Board Member Cash. There you go. Board Member Rustaller, absent. Board Member Winterness.
Here.
We heard about your journey. And Board Member Sandoval.
Present.
Excellent. So I did notice that Assembly Member Grayson is here with us, and liaison advisors, I know Maura McKennesby, Jim Waters are here. Are there other liaison? And I see Nicole. Thank you. Are there other? Oh, there you are. Hi, Kathy.
Supervisor Miller joined. Hi.
Hi there. Are there any other liaison advisors that would like to let me know that they are here? I'm looking through our participant list, and I think we've got everyone. One last call for Supervisor Provenza.
He's just calling me on the phone right now.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Well, do you want to give him a minute, Campbell? We'll check him in when he
Sorry
gets.
about that. He was kicked out, and so he's trying to rejoin again. So James, if you see anything there, if you could help him out, that'd be great.
That's not very kind of us to kick out one of our board members.
Really?
I did resend the link to him, so he should have received it to his Yahoo email.
Okay, good.
Okay.
All right, so I just wanted to quickly just run through our standard Zoom practice. We're all getting quite good at this now. Board members, staff, and presenters all have the ability to unmute themselves. Please remain muted if you're not talking. And then if you are a member of the public, you're welcome to comment at the recognized times. If you go down to the bottom of the Zoom platform, you'll see a raise hand option. The host will unmute you, recognize you, and unmute you. If you're on the phone, you'll actually have to hit #2 to raise your hand. And then again, you'll be recognized by the host, and you may actually have to unmute yourself from your phone as well. And then lastly, if you have any additional comments that you'd like to write down or any concerns or issues, you can send them via email to contact@deltaconservancy.ca.gov, and we will be responding to that too. So I think that's it for the ground rules. Welcome everyone, and we can continue.
Great, good. Well, thank you, Campbell. Good morning, Assemblymember Grayson. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're glad to have you with us. And
my pleasure.
Great. Okay, with that, then we'll move down to our public comment. This is for items that are either not on the agenda or it's categorized new business, but it's an opportunity for any member of the public or any member of the board, for that matter, to comment on any item that's not on the agenda. We go to our host. Do we have any?
Yeah, I did try to promote Supervisor Provenza, so Supervisor Provenza should be promoted to a panelist now and should be able to unmute himself freely. There is no.
Thank you.
Morning,
Yeah.
Jim. Good to see you, Jim.
There's no
Sorry.
hands from the public currently raised, though.
I will note that Supervisor Provenza is here.
Great, thank you, Jessica. Thank you, James. So we have no members of the public who wish to speak this time on matters not on the agenda. So we'll Move down to our consent calendar on number 4, which is the approval of the October 27th, 2021 board meeting summary and action items that was attached in our packet. Would go to my colleagues. Are there any corrections or modifications to the board meeting summary that you'd like to make? If not, motion would be in order, and I would ask if there's any public comment as well on the meeting minutes. Tim? Supervisor Provenza, did you have a comment?
No, I'm sorry. I just hadn't removed the.
Okay, good. All right.
There's currently no hands raised from the public.
Okay, very good. All right, with that then, unless there's any modifications or corrections, motion be in order.
Miller moved to approve.
Mashburn will second.
Okay, so we have a motion by Miller, second by Mashburn to approve the meeting summary from October 27th, 2021. If there's nothing further, I'd ask our clerk, Jessica, please to call the roll.
Okay, Chair Natoli,
Aye.
Vice Chair Matsumoto,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchoff,
Yes.
Supervisor Miller,
Yes.
Supervisor Mashburn,
Yes.
Supervisor Provenza,
Yes.
Board Member Gail Miller,
Yes.
Board Member Cash.
Aye.
I have Board Member Rustoller absent, Board Member Winternitz,
Aye.
and Board Member Sandoval.
Yes.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 ayes. The motion carries, 1 absent.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Jessica.
Mhm.
All right, moving down to our agenda, then the executive officer's report. Campbell, I know you got a number of items you're going to cover, so we'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. Good morning again. We're going to start with the good news, bad news section of the executive officer's report. The good news is that Hope Miller, who briefly introduced herself earlier, has joined us. She's our new communications analyst. She's been with us since November 15th. She'll be working on outreach, communications, accessibility, and information technology needs. Hope has just been really fantastic so far. She has been very helpful in getting all the outreach material out for the Delta Drought Response Pilot Project, which we'll talk about later. So she's just been wonderful to have. And she's coming to us from the NBC affiliate here in Sacramento, where she was the station's senior digital editor prior to joining the Conservancy. So welcome, Hope.
Welcome, Hope. We're adding to the Miller family here. We've got Hope, Kathy, and Gail. So
And Kathy, we got a lot of Millers.
Yeah, we got a trifecta here. So anyway, Hope, you want to say anything?
Oh, sure. Just very nice to meet you all. Looking forward to working with you guys. Really excited for this new role that I'm in.
Great. Well, again, welcome. Thanks, Campbell, for the introduction.
So next up is Martha Ozanoff, who has been with us for a while, has actually agreed to step into the role as acting community project supervisor for the Prop 68 program. So we very much appreciate her doing that. And we are actively working to fill that position and hoping to do interviews next week and the following week on that position.
Martha, you can smile a little more about the extra duties. There you go.
We appreciate her stepping up.
Thank you.
Let's see, this was not in the executive officer's report, but just this week we did make an offer to an environmental scientist that accepted the position. So we're grateful, and they will be starting with us here in about 3 weeks. So that brings us to the also good news, but really bad news. And that is that Deputy Executive Officer Deborah Kustik, after 30 years of state service, has decided to retire. I think that must mean that she probably started with the state when she was about 15. She's been with us since 2016 and really just has covered, all of the operations for the Conservancy. Really just the heart and soul of the organization. It's been a pleasure working with her, and certainly, immeasurable gratitude for all that she's done for the Conservancy. So, we want to wish her the best as she goes off into hopefully a long, healthy, happy retirement. After a very successful career. Her expectation is that she will be with us through the March board meeting. So I hope you'll all just join me in thanking Deborah for everything she's done for the Conservancy and wishing her well.
Thanks, Campbell. Deborah, yeah, we're going to give you this virtual applause, but you were right about the kind of good news, bad news. We're happy for you, but obviously we're going to miss you. Deborah, you've been a real, as Campbell said, a real foundation for much of the work that's been done by the Conservancy, much good work. So anything you'd like to tell us about what the plans are and any comments? Go ahead, Deborah.
Yeah, and I must say that when I, always envisioned retirement, I never thought that it would be quite as hard to step away as it actually is. And I think it's because of the great organization, and it's easy to leave somewhere that you're not happy. And I'm only leaving because it's just the right time in my life to retire. But it's been just a fantastic time with the Conservancy and working with everyone, and just hugely gratifying and rewarding, and just an absolute privilege to be in this position and work with the great team and the board that I've been able to do. So just, thank you. And I'll be here for the next board meeting. So.
That's great, Deborah. Well, I don't know, other board members, I know we've had, our past chairs who've worked very closely with certain members of this Conservancy board and a lot of our partner agencies. So opportunity if anybody else wanted to say a few words. I guess you'll be back in March, but so we don't want to belabor it here, but just in case you sneak out before we come together again.
Better not.
No.
Okay. I got Jim, you got your hand up, and I see Karen and Kathy. Yeah.
Deborah, I think I just interviewed you like last week for the position. It seems that way. But it's really been a pleasure working with you. And I guess California is one of the only states where you can retire when you're still in your 30s. So that's a good thing. But you've done a great job. It's been so nice to have you there. You've worked well with the members of the Conservancy board, with the counties, with the state, just all around very effective and a pleasure to work with. So we'll miss you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I recall attending board meetings before I applied, and Campbell, everybody would go around the room and introduce themselves, and it's like, who are you with? And I'm like, hi, just interested party. And then I had to go up to Jim and Campbell afterward and say, okay, I'm going to be one of your candidates, and that's why I'm here, because it was incredibly awesome.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jim. Karen, and then Kathy. Go ahead.
Well, I too, Deborah, want to wish you the best. I know we'll see you again. It's interesting. We had our Board of Supervisors retreat yesterday, and as is our practice, we had Dr. Chris Thornburg, who's an economist, and you fit the demographic of why people are retiring at a younger age. So I'm right behind you, but I'm not as young as you next year. But I wish you well, and it is a little daunting to be thinking about not having to get up and go to work every day. And I don't know about you, but the question I keep in, what are you going to do when you retire? You know what? I'm not going to do anything for a while. And I wish that on you too.
Yes, I will do a lot of hiking and skiing and kayaking and things like that.
Good.
Thanks, Karen. Okay, Kathy, go ahead. You are moot, Kath.
I got it. Thanks. Deborah, I just want to say what a pleasure it's been working with you, having served as chair. Your assistance, your knowledge, everything's just, it makes it so much easier. And I know Campbell is really going to be sorry to see you go. And, it's interesting. Your arrival at the Conservancy really came at a great time, because it was at a point where suddenly, after years of the Conservancy not really having much funding to accomplish a lot of things, all of a sudden there was funding and new interest and a lot of new responsibility placed on the Conservancy. And you were so instrumental in making sure that we got the processes in place and we got the staffing we needed. And you really helped Campbell take this organization to the next level. And I know he feels like it would have been very difficult to do it without you. And as a board member, I feel the same way. So wish you all the best, well-deserved retirement. I hope you just enjoy yourself. And I have no doubt you will end up landing in a place where you know exactly where you want to reconnect and reengage. But I know that your love for the environment will lead you to some good places. So thank you for all
Absolutely.
you've done for the Conservancy.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate all the kind words. And, you know, I feel like, and one of the reasons why it is hard to step away is because I feel like the Conservancy is sort of on the edge of making that sort of leap again. So it'll be a wonderful opportunity for my successor to come in and have that experience as well. So, but it's been wonderful to be able to do that.
Thanks, Kathy. And again, thank you so much, Deborah. We'll get a chance to say a final farewell at the March meeting.
Yeah.
But we certainly very grateful and very appreciative of all your work. Obviously, it's been professional pursuit, but you put a lot of effort, and certainly it's shown. And as my colleagues and I'm sure others had thought, that'll be reflected in the weeks ahead. Very much appreciated, and you've helped advance the work of the Conservancy. And you can look out over the landscape, and as you drive around in your free time and retirement, and you had an impact in many, many different ways and a lot of different projects. And so again, thank you for your good work, and we wish you well, and we're glad you're going to be with us for a couple more months. So
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Anyone else?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kemal. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, under the rest, this is going to be mundane after all of that. And I definitely second Kathy Miller's comments about, how hard it would have been to stand up those programs without Deborah's expert experience. So, okay, so moving on, not much to report on COVID update. Not much has changed. The executive order has been extended to the end of March, so we can continue to meet like this through our March board meeting. No expectation of further extensions after that, so we'll be sorting out how to do hybrid meetings in the meantime. It is Form 700 compliance time, so if you could get those in, the due date is April 1. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to Jessica Adel. The ethics course certification completion, it appears that most people have done that, but if you have not, please get your certificate in as soon as possible. Moving on, we have a new section in the Executive Officer's Report called Media Mentions, and this is in part, or all due to Hope Miller's interest in trying to keep the board apprised of where we're showing up in the media. And so there's two recognitions there. First, there was a discussion of the Knightsen Wetland project in the East Contra Costa County newspaper. Talked about that project and some of the issues around that project. And then Maven's Notebook ran a summary of a Delta Stewardship Council presentation on Delta carbon capture storage, which is an emerging issue that we will want to talk about at a board meeting at some point in the future as well. And I've just provided introduction and an overview of that topic there. So hopefully that's something you all will enjoy and get to see where we're popping up more broadly in the media in the future. I'm going to kind of breeze through the rest. Obviously, happy to answer any questions on the strategic plan. We've got that coming up on agenda item 11. The nutria eradication is also the reports in there. If anybody has any questions, nothing really significant to note there, other than the numbers are looking good. And I think by saying the numbers are looking good, that's almost meaning more the numbers are not looking bad. The curves are they're still out there, but the curves aren't going exponential, which is really what we're trying to prevent. I'm going to skip down a little bit here. Did want to mention the bird returns program. So that's a program that we partnered with the Nature Conservancy on. That program ended up getting seven bids in the Delta, looking at flooding up 3,000 acres. Interestingly, while those bids were being procured, we had 6 inches of rain, but that program is still moving on. And we'll give you a more complete summary of which projects were actually executed by the Nature Conservancy at our next board meeting. I did want to note the next item there that we did put in a grant application to the EPA Wetland Program Development Grant. And unfortunately, that was a large partnership and a lot of work, particularly on the part of Rachel Wigginton, to coordinate and organize that, but we were not granted funding under that grant.
Was there any reason given why we weren't granted funding?
Rachel, I don't know if you want to speak to that. I don't recall the specifics. Do you? Rachel, you
Sorry.
might.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself and it was just like a spinning wheel. So the solicitation was very competitive. We were able to have a follow-up conversation with the EPA about the decision. So they received something like 12 or 13 applications and they were able to fund 8 of them. They did give us some feedback about our budget being in the right realm, which was useful. We were a little afraid we had overshot, and that was one of the reasons that the proposal wasn't accepted. But overall, they said it was a good proposal and it was just a competitive solicitation process and encouraged us to apply again. So we'll see what happens in the next funding cycle, but it was an interesting project and a good partnership with SFEI. So there's the potential to pivot that proposal to another funding source if something appropriate appears.
Just curious though, so yeah, we had a good proposal. We were one of the 5, it sounds like, that weren't funded, but for example, who did they fund?
That I don't know specifically. I mean, I heard some just from my colleagues that did have successful proposals. So this is for the EPA Region 9. So it's not just California, it's a large part of the West Coast. So I do know a couple of California proposals that were funded, but it's just a large geographic range. And so they're also trying to spread the funding out across that region.
So were there other public agencies or were they nonprofits or partnerships that got funded? Again, I'm just, without getting too much detail, I'm just curious though as to, when Conservancy made up of, 5 counties, obviously the state agencies and all the, partners that we have here, would seem to me that, and key obviously to, what goes on in the state of California. I'm just curious as to, who else got funded, for example? Just give me of those that you know.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know any specific organizations, but the organizations, or I know SFEI had another proposal that got funded to look at vernal pools, for example, and a colleague in Southern California was funded to look at marine protected areas along the coast and sort of compare marine protected areas to estuarine protected areas. So mostly, CSUs, other state agencies, things like that in partnership with folks like SFEI and other nonprofits.
Okay, that helps. Thanks, Rachel. I see Dolly, you have your hand up. Go ahead, Dolly.
Thanks, Chair Natoli. Rachel, just on top of Don's questions there, is there a public list that the organization will eventually put out that we could compare ourselves to against those who did get funding?
Yeah, definitely. This is federal funding, so all that will be made public information, and it might already be on the internet. I just don't personally know it at this moment, but I'm happy to do a follow-up and provide that information to the board in the future.
I would just
I think that would be helpful. I remember years ago when Shakura was still with us, we had lost out on a couple of grants, and she was able to follow up. And I think Campbell, you may recall, she gave us, the board and you, some info as to what we could do to make our position better in future applications. So again, as we all try to reach for what limited pot of money there is to do great work, and everybody wants to do great work, maybe just doing a little research and next year reminding ourselves what advantages we could have perhaps taken in our future applications.
Absolutely, that's really important, and I think we typically do that sort of post-mortem, particularly with the large team that was involved on this one. I guess one thing I will say, Rachel did mention that sort of this is a national solicitation, so it's very competitive. They do want to kind of spread their money around, and I'll note that we've gotten 3 successive grants from this program in the past to do most of the work that we've done with SFEI on EcoAtlas and the Diary project, which is also summarized here. So I do sort of think they've, without telling us, there was a little bit of, hey, we've given you guys enough money. Let's give some to somebody else now. But obviously that's not going to be part of their feedback to us. But nonetheless, it is a competitive process. And
Fair enough.
Yeah, and really want to thank Rachel. Rachel just did an incredible job of coordinating with the other partners. And I'm sure you all know how hard that can be when you have different organizations, slightly different ideas about what can be done, different writing styles. And so she really did the heroic lift of pulling all that together and making it a good cohesive proposal.
Yeah, and as far as I can tell, that the information on who was funded in the last round hasn't been released on their site yet. And Rachel has done the follow-up that we're able to do at this point, following up on our individual application. And then once that information is available, that's already in the pipeline to follow up and determine kind of in the context that Campbell just said, as far as, you know, we could be as competitive as possible and it just might not be our turn. But seeing what was funded and seeing what we can glean from that. And then we're also just keeping tabs on things that we can put into grant opportunities. So holding this in the wings, if in case we need to reimagine it for another opportunity, looking at other programs that we could stand up should an opportunity for funding arise, so that we have that available for application.
All right, so moving on. Thanks, everyone. Just wanted to mention that under the Delta Science Coordination, on Monday, there will be the first Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee Restoration Subcommittee meeting. That's a mouthful, but we've been working, I think we've chatted with you about this in the past. We've been working very closely with Stewardship Council to interview all the member agencies and talk about what a restoration subcommittee could do. The real intent here is that it's going to help coordinate and integrate restoration, improve our learning, and hopefully do, you know, better understand where restoration works. Very excited from our perspective. Many of you may remember that we used to have the Delta Restoration Network, which was a forum where we brought together agencies and practitioners and everyone involved in restoration to coordinate that issue. So we've been working hard to try to make sure that this has that component, particularly that component with community outreach and engagement moving forward. So it's exciting that we actually have our first meeting on Monday, and we'll certainly report back out to the board in the future. The Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team continues to move on. Again, I just want to thank Rachel for all of her effort in helping to keep being a driving force behind the 2021 Delta Invasive Species Symposium that took place back in December. And she's going to give us a broader overview of that and early detection, rapid response issues in the Delta later on in the agenda. So that's it for the program elements. There was just the one directive at the October meeting, and that was to send out the invitation to the symposium, which has been done. Unless there's questions on program stuff, I'll turn it over to Jessica for the budget overview.
Okay, any questions of Campbell at this juncture?
Great.
Okay, thanks. Campbell, Jessica.
Hey, agenda item 5.3 is our Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Conservancy budget expenditure report. We do have budget and expenditure through November 30. Hopefully you've had a chance to review the report. The only thing I did want to point out is there is a change, and we spoke about it last time. We did the climate resilience, community access, and natural resource protection appropriation of local assistance of $5,250,000 has been added to line 17 under grants and subventions. And so we can move forward with that program now. What you haven't seen yet is the DRIP, or the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program of 10 million. And we did just get that formalized on our budget this week. So you will see it in our next meeting. So we'll have that 10 million of appropriation added to the budget. I did just get December reporting today. So typically mid-year, we do a good look at the budget expenditure report, and we'll be doing that with the executive team later in the month or early next month. Is there any questions?
Okay, thanks. Jessica, any questions on budgetary matters? Oh yeah, I see hand. Sandy, go ahead.
Yeah, I noticed that the contracts line items are pretty robust still, and given all the staffing transitions you all have going on, I don't know how it works at the state, but I guess I would encourage you to consider outsourcing to the degree you can, because I'm imagining that you guys are really scrambling to cover a lot of things right now. So it looks like you're low spending there. And if there are ways to make the world more manageable as you transition all these positions, I think that might be a good way of not making everyone crazy.
Thanks. Deborah, did you want to speak to that at all, or?
Yeah, sure. So we are definitely looking at that where we can. There are some limitations. Mostly what we need are personnel bodies to do things. And we are somewhat limited in being able to contract out for that, just because the state system makes it a priority to use state workers over contractors whenever possible. But with that said, we are always keeping an eye out for that. And we are looking at an opportunity to bring on some retired annuitants that can step in, fill that gap while we're making more permanent hires. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that suggestion, and we're definitely working towards that.
Thanks, Deborah. Thanks, Sandy. Anything further?
If there's no further questions, that concludes the executive officer's report. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Do we have any public comments on the report, James?
No hands raised from the public currently.
Okay, thank you very much.
No public comment via email.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Excuse me. Okay, very good. Then we'll move down to item number 6, which is the Prop 1 Restoration Water Quality Grant Program. And I think Shelley's going to handle this. So,
good morning. Shelley Temple King, environmental scientist here at the Delta Conservancy. It's my pleasure to present to you agenda item 6, the Proposition 1 project update. I'll highlight a few of our current Proposition 1 project updates, along with some updates of projects that are closing. We're about to hit a big bundle of closing projects. And then, as always, we've provided the complete program update in the board materials. Following these project updates, I'll present a summary of the full proposals that were received for the Cycle 5 solicitation, and then next steps in the review process. So at the top of the Proposition 1 staff report, which is page 2, or the board packet page 14, the Delta Waterways Habitat Restoration, a Cycle 4 funded planning project, which is ID 1804, is continuing to develop site design, conservation, and grazing plans for active sites. They also submitted a Cycle 5 implementation proposal for 2 of the planned sites at Ulysses Creek. At the bottom of page 4 of the Prop 1 staff report, page 16 of the board packet, the East Bay Regional Park District's Bay Point Habitat Restoration, ID 1701, is complete and in the process of closeout. The grantee submitted a Cycle 5 planning proposal for another park site at Big Break National Shoreline. At the top of page 5 of the Proposition 1 staff report, page 17 of the board packet, restoration planning at River Garden Farms, a Cycle 3 planning project, ID 1702, has been released from its pause work order, and the farm sale was finalized on November 17th, 2021. The new owner, Renewable Resources Group, is supportive of restoration on site, and also is interested in expanding the restoration planning, resulting in American River's request for a time-sensitive amendment that was approved by our executive officer in coordination with the chair, consistent with our approved amendments process on January 19th, 2022. The amended agreement is in the process of execution. At the bottom of page 5 of the Proposition 1 staff report, page 17 of the board packet, another Cycle 3 funded project, the Knightsen Wetland Restoration and Flood Protection, ID 1709, has requested an amendment to the term and budget of the grant agreement, which will be presented as agenda item 12 at this meeting. At the top of page 8 of the Proposition 1 staff report, page 20 of the board packet, Solano County RCD's Peterson Ranch Working Waterway Habitat Enhancement, ID 1605, is complete and in the process of closeout. Directly below, investigations of restoration techniques that limit invasion of tidal wetlands, ID 1612, is complete and in the process of closeout. At the bottom of page 8 of the staff report, page 20 of the board packet, the Yolo Bypass Wildlife Area Habitat and Drainage Improvement Project, ID 1503, is complete. The grantee is preparing final reporting documents and has submitted a Cycle 5 implementation proposal for the remaining restoration sites. At the top of page 9 of the staff report, 21 of the board packet, the Three Creeks Parkway Restoration number 1, ID 1509, is complete. The grantee is preparing final reporting documents. At the bottom of page 9 of the staff report, page 21 of the board packet, YOLO RCD, grantee for wildlife corridors for flood escape on the YOLO Bypass Wildlife Area, a Cycle 1 implementation project, ID 1516, submitted a time-sensitive amendment to the grant term that was approved on December 21st, 2021. The amended agreement, sorry, there was an update to this first thing this morning. The amended agreement was executed this morning. And so this was another time-sensitive amendment that was approved by our executive officer in coordination with the chair and vice chair. At the bottom of page 11 of the staff report, page 23 of the board packet, the city of West Sacramento submitted a full proposal for the implementation of a closed planning project, Bees Lakes Habitat Restoration, ID 1712. I'm happy to take any questions or comments about these project updates, and then I'll move on to the Cycle 5 full proposal solicitation update.
Great. Thank you, Shelley, for the report. Go to members of the Conservancy Board. Any questions or comments? I do see a hand. Leo, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's great to see projects that are closed up and final reports being prepared or final reports prepared. That's a great sign of progress moving forward. But I'd love to see, I guess, at some point, and for all the board and the public, is post-project and pre-project, post-project pictures to show some of the changes that have occurred as a consequence of this, the restoration projects going on. I don't know if it's on our website or not, but I should take a look. But that's a suggestion I have.
Yeah, I actually made a note about that yesterday as I was going through some past board directives that we need to make sure that we have some visuals. And I made a note that we might even invite grantees back to present on the projects. So thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah. Good suggestion, Leo, and thanks, Shelley. Yes, Sandy, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, Shelley, thanks so much for the report. You guys are making a ton of progress. And so I'm sure you're busy. One question, and you may cover this when you get to the Cycle 5 piece, but I wondered about the Stone Lakes project. I saw the note here that they did the pre-proposal or the concept proposal, but not the full proposal. So I just wondered sort of where that, like if there was a reason why that project is, isn't moving forward into implementation.
So there is a reason. The CEQA process is being, so the lead agency is the Sacramento County, and there have been several delays through just the general CEQA process. Some of them had to do with like cultural resource assessments and tribal consultation. That's all been resolved. And I was just linking with Aaron yesterday to try to find out kind of where the county is at this point with the current delay. And he's a little uncertain. So more than likely that project is going to need a term extension. But I do know that there was consideration for the Fish and Wildlife Proposition 1 funding that was, the RFP was just released this week. If I recall correctly, Knightsen Limited was exploring that as a possibility for implementation funding.
Shelley, I would just say if I can assist, I don't know who the point of contact is with the Parks Department or with the environmental review, but if there's some assistance I can offer as far as facilitating, getting the right folks to respond to you, certainly reach out to me or have Campbell get a hold of me. I'll be happy to do that. So.
Thank you, Chairman Tully. I appreciate that.
Sandy, anything else?
Just the Cycle 5 update. So there's all of the projects are listed in Figure 1 on page 13 of the staff report, which is page 25 of the board packet. And the project table is notated when applicable with information regarding previous applications and or funding. But we received 8 full proposals, 5 implementation and 3 planning for a total request of $4.7 million. Of the 5 implementation proposals, planning for 2 was funded by Delta Conservancy Proposition 1 awards. One of the implementation proposals is phase 2 of a current implementation award. Proposals were received for projects in Contra Costa, San Joaquin, Solano, and Yolo counties. The proposals are currently in review internally in preparation for external review by the Department of Fish and Wildlife, Delta Protection Commission, Department of Water Resources, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and as applicable, the Department of Food and Agriculture, the Central Valley Regional Water Quality Control Board, the State Coastal Conservancy for Environmental Justice Review, and others as necessary. Following external review and coordination, we plan to bring award recommendations to the board in May of 2022.
Okay, thanks, Shelley.
And I'm happy to take any other questions.
All right, very good. Any other questions, comments? See any hands? James, do we have any folks on?
No hands from the public currently.
Very good. Okay, thank you, Shelley. A lot of work ongoing, and good to hear the status updates. All right, with that, then we'll move from item 6, with nothing further, to item 7, which is the update on our Prop 68 Community and Economic Enhancement Grant Program. And I believe Martha's going to handle this one. So good morning, Martha.
Good morning. Good morning, board members. Thank you. I'm pleased to be here. My name is Martha Osnoff, and as Campbell mentioned earlier, I have accepted an out-of-class assignment as the Community Project Supervisor. I'm here to present Agenda Item 7, the Proposition 68 Community and Economic Enhancement Grant Program Update, which is on page 27 of your agenda packet. Past 2 months have been busy getting up to speed with the program and moving projects forward. To that end, I'm pleased to report that work has officially started on project ID P6804, the boat launch facility and Central Harbor Park upgrade with the city of Pittsburgh. Executed in December, this is a planning grant, and the grantee is working with their subcontractor on public outreach, which is due to start in February. For more details, this is the second project listed on the table on page 27 of the agenda packet, page 1 of the agenda item attachment. Since our last board meeting, we've also executed project ID 6803 with the city of West Sacramento, the Southport Recreational Trail Grant, which provides funding to create planning documents for the paving of a 5.6 mile trail along the top of the Sacramento levee. This is the first project listed on the table on page 27 of the agenda packet, page 1 of the attachment. Continuing on to page 28 in your packet and page 2 of the agenda item attachment, we've listed the 3 projects that the board approved at the October board meeting: the land acquisition for the Clarksburg Schoolhouse, the Walk in the Marsh project at the Pacific Flyway Center, and funding for the development of the Asian American Heritage Park in Isleton. Program staff are busy working on the grant agreements for these 3 projects, and we expect to have signed agreements in place by early February. In addition to these projects, staff are actively working with 5 applicants to move their proposals forward for board consideration later in the year. Details about these proposals can be found on page 29 of the packet, page 3 of the attachment, and we look forward to bringing these proposals to you in the coming months. Lastly, as noted on pages 29 and 30 of the agenda packet, page 3 and 4 of the attachment, we've recently received 2 concept proposals for consideration. The first is project ID 6814, listed on page 29, which was received by the Bethel Island Chamber of Commerce and was deemed ineligible because it didn't meet the program objectives for the grant. The second proposal is project ID 6815, the last item on the table at the bottom of page 29. We were still reviewing the proposal at the time the report was written, but it was also found to be ineligible because the project was inconsistent with program objectives. Finally, although not noted on the staff report, we are pleased to be working with the Delta Schooling Center, who is in the process of developing a concept proposal for public access planning grant along the San Joaquin River in Stock. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions or comments.
Okay, board members, any questions? Martha, I wanted to ask you just on the Discover the Delta Foundation. That's been a project that's been many, many years and different iterations over time. But and initially they submitted for, I think, much larger amount. I know this has received support from Delta counties and you know, actually Sacramento County a number of years ago put some funding towards some of the initial work that been accomplished out there. Can you just provide a quick update? Just, you know, it continues to be under review. I know they've gone through some transition with some of their leadership with the group. So is there anything you could update us on? Because it seems like this is just interminably lengthy as it relates to actually getting to what the, you know, vision. I know the vision's been modified. So anyway, I'm just curious as to where we are.
I appreciate that sentiment, and yes, it's been a process, I'll say for sure. The reason why it was originally a larger grant is it's now been split out into two proposals, one that is in the planning stage and one for implementation, partly because the plans that they had for the center were 9 years old at the time that we received the application, and so we wanted them to update those plans, those permits with the county and with other agencies that needed to sign off on it. So we've split that out. We're working very actively with the proponent for the project. We met with them in early January to tighten up the concept proposal. And I will say Margita has been very generous with her time and her patience as we've transitioned with staff and brought me up to speed on it. And I'm happy to say that we're getting significantly closer, and we have a proposal that I believe is ready for executive, administrative, and legal review, which will happen in the next several weeks. We're meeting with executive staff on the 31st, so next Monday, to talk about this proposal in particular, as well as a couple other ones that are of those 5 proposals that we're actively moving from active proposals to board presentations, and that's one of the ones as well. So they're all top. Hard to pick your favorite child, but really hoping to move this one forward.
Yeah, well, thank you, because I know that I had our planning department spend some time last year because there was questions about whether the underlying use permit for the use had applicability to the visitor center, because obviously there's the farmers market there and some of the other development on the site, but we were able to sort through that. But it took some institutional memory and a bit of research, and we got there. And I was glad to see that. Obviously, the building permits will have to be reapplied for, but the underlying use, I assume you have that information, has been validated. And our planning director just retired last week, and she was very helpful, though, and going back some 10 years and not longer to be sure that we had that in place. And so hopefully that helped facilitate some of the conversation. So
I think it was very helpful. They've had a vision for a long time. It's an exciting project.
And last, I would just say the other one, the Victory Highway sign, which I'm familiar with. I know that we've had staff and I just would note that making sure that we're energized on this side of that, working with the community, and appreciate, I know you've been involved, and but I've been tracking that with staff monthly to make sure that our folks maintain as a priority project within the County Department of Transportation. So
when we really appreciate your help on that. We also met with that applicant in early January, and it's a really fun project, I have to say. And it was also nice because they've had some staff turnover, so I didn't feel quite so bad about our staff turnovers. We got to compare notes on that one. And but we had a very productive meeting with them, solid 2 hours where we went over pretty much literally line by line. It was a pleasure to be working with the county staff who had, they really knew what they were talking about. They knew what we were looking for. We were able to point them in the direction of, some additional resources that we needed. They have, as of Tuesday, gotten us back all of their comments. And so that's on my plate to look through and see what we can do to move forward. I'm envisioning probably 1, 2, maybe 3 more rounds of working with them to get the proposal tightened up and the budget tightened up. And then the next step is, admin, legal, and executive review. And then we present it to the board. So a little bit further back, I think, in the planning process than the Delta Welcome Center, but for sure, nipping at her heels.
Okay, very good. Thanks for your work. Thanks for stepping up to you, Martha. Appreciate it.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure. I'm very pleased to be working with this program.
Anybody else? Any other questions, comments about the projects? If not, thank you, Martha. Do we have any members of the public that wish to address item 7?
Look like
Oh, I see.
Matt.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Mitch, go ahead. I'm sorry. Your hand.
No problem. Martha, just really quickly, the Pacific Flyway, the walkway on the Pacific Flyway, can you speak to that just a little bit and kind of where that's at, and if there's anything that I need to do from a county perspective to help you with that?
Absolutely. We're getting very close to getting that agreement executed. We're working on the grant agreement right now. We've had some questions about the status of the permit, and I will say that the grantee has answered those. And we also had some questions on fair and reasonable that we have to just make sure that subcontractors are selected in a fair and reasonable way. And as well, the grantee is very actively and very helpfully working with us on that. So I think it's just a matter sort of timing and priorities. And this one is one of, we really want to get those 3 projects that the board approved in October with grant agreements signed and on the ground. And so those are for sure top priorities as well. And I would envision it happening in, early February, right around the corner for sure. So. Yeah, no, and no need. I mean, no need not to reach out to them, but they don't need any nudges. They've been very helpful.
Thanks, Mitch. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Not in James. You said there was no public comments on this item.
No hands raised currently.
No public comment.
Thank you both. Okay. Okay. Let's then keep moving down our agenda. We're now down to item number 8, the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program. And I know Campbell's been working along with staff feverishly on this, and we've had a good deal of interest as I understand it. So Campbell, I'll let you bring us up to date.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's very exciting to be able to present to the board on the new program. You recall that we've talked a little bit about the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program at the October meeting and that it was imminent. We're very happy to announce that we did open the program as of Wednesday last week. So far, we've gotten more than 20 applications to the program. And I spent a good bit of time on the phone yesterday responding to questions about the program. So it seems like it's quite possible that we will be able to do everything that we were hoping to do with this program very quickly. So I just want to start by saying, this is a shining example of what conservancies are all about, working with the community and the agencies to try to join state and local interests. I won't say that this was the fastest state grant program that's ever been turned out, but I will say it's got to be up there pretty high. And I just want to thank all the staff and all the partners for just really hard, diligent work. This is a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and every piece, well, you get the reference. So it is a collaboration between Department of Water Resources, the Delta Water Master, and the Delta community, and of course the Conservancy. We stepped in sort of towards the tail end of most of the negotiations to actually be the group that would run the grant program, and then of course design that solicitation, open the solicitation. It's really facilitated by an interagency agreement with the Department of Water Resources, where they've transferred $10 million to us. A little bit of that funding, about $400,000, is for program oversight. About $1.6 million will be as part of a subcontract with University UC Davis to do the hardcore model monitoring, the more intense monitoring, and then help us to bring that all together in a report that'll help us really understand what we've learned. I didn't really hit the purpose of this. I mean, obviously the purpose is to try to reduce consumptive water use during drought. But equally as important is to try to learn and better understand which practices are most effective, which practices actually do result in significant water savings from which types of crops we're working with, and geographically in the Delta, where does it work best? All really to inform future drought management, either if this drought is prolonged or if we have more droughts in the future. So it's an exciting program. Ultimately, applicants will be paid up to they will be paid $900 per enrolled acre. And the practices that we're looking at are, changes in crop pattern, going from a more consumptive crop to a less consumptive crop, doing fallowing. There could be irrigation application efficiencies that are applied. And then we're fairly open. I mean, we've put the solicitation out saying, here are some example practices, but we're looking for creative ideas. We have put together a selection committee that has already met. We met last week and reviewed the first batch of applications. And that includes ourselves, DWR, the Water Master, ag economist from UC Merced, member from California Department of Food and Agriculture. And I'm missing one. I know I got to look at my notes. Ourselves. Oh, I'm sorry. UC Agricultural and Natural Resource Ag Advisor for the Delta. So a very robust team that'll be looking at all aspects of these, trying to determine which of these we should fund. Our hope is that we will, move the entire block this year, and given that, just by my rough estimation, we're probably already looking at between 5,000 and 6,000 acres of interest in enrolling, and we're just in the first week. I suspect we'll be able to get there. One thing I just want to, remind the board that, due to the nature of this being very time sensitive, we will be exercising our delegation authority flexibility to the maximum extent possible, which ultimately means that we have $100,000 that we can approve just at my level, but anything above that needs to be approved by the board, with the exception of when it is time sensitive. And in those conditions, when it's time sensitive, it can be approved with coordination with the chair and the vice chair. So we anticipate that we will be using that quite a bit. This is obviously in alignment with our interest in all Delta interests. So we expect these to be, obviously we'll be making recommendations of projects that we believe are good projects to move forward. As time allows, we will bring batches of these to the board meeting in March. But of course, there may be time before and after ones that we will have to work with the chair and vice chair to approve. All that said, everything will be reported to the board, every transaction, either in the staff report or actually in recommendations to the board when those timelines align. I guess the last thing that just reminded me too, I want to make sure that everybody knows that this is all about transparency of data. And that's one of the reasons that it's such a great partnership with the Delta growers. They're very interested in getting this information. It helps them understand how to manage, helps them understand where they can actually save water. This is all about transparent information and data and mutual learning on both sides of the equation. So I think that's a really, really excellent component about the program. So that's a probably overly long summary, but I'll leave it at that and see if there's any questions.
Okay, thanks, Campbell. Yes, Leo, go ahead.
Yeah, Campbell, I think this sounds like a great project. I noticed with interest here that water conserved through actions will be allocated to protecting Delta water quality and will not be available for diversion or exports. So essentially what you're saying is water not diverted onto the islands for crop usage will remain in the Delta channels and contribute to fresh Delta water quality. I believe that's right.
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, and your DWR is a partner and you have the Delta Water Master involved, so there's going to be a lot of monitoring. What about the Bureau of Reclamation? Do they need to get involved in this? Because, I mean, they have their pumps in the Southern Delta too. So they see additional water there. There is the chance that they may just pick it up. So how do you account for that scenario?
That's a very good question. And sorry, making sure I'm not on mute. I have to say, I don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head. I mean, I know that DWR, this sort of was initiated as part of the consideration for the voluntary agreements as a way to help meet some of the Delta requirements in drought. And so I know that, you know, that's in coordination with the Bureau, but I don't know that they've specifically coordinated on this and specifically understand that this is not water available for them to export. But I will definitely explore that with our DWR partners.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leo. Yes, Jim, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask who the solicitations went out to. Was it a broad list, and is it still timely for someone interested to submit an application?
Yes, absolutely. So the applications will be received on a continuous basis. So they keep trickling in. Maybe Hope can give us a number here when I'm done with this question of where we are today. But it went out very broadly. And basically, we sent it out to our entire listserv. We shared it with the Delta Protection Commission, shared it with the Delta Levees and Habitat Advisory Committee, which is all the district engineers and reclamation district owners who reach out to their farmers. But probably most importantly, it went to the sort of the core team from the Delta growers that were involved in helping design this program and try to make it something that would be attractive to Delta agricultural interests. So the North, South, and Central Delta water agencies all had people involved in those initial discussions, and then they've taken it upon themselves to try to make sure that the information gets out directly to the growers. One of the other things I'll just say is, you know, all my conversations yesterday were direct conversations with growers who have gotten these links and are interested. And gosh, it's been the best outreach that we've had directly to growers in our history. So there's going to be just a lot of sort of relationship developing, and again, it's encouraging. So, Hope, do you have that number? Offhand?
Yes. To date, we have received 31 different applications. Some people submitted more than one application, so it's about 20 to 25 different people. But we have 31 responses, and we've started reviewing some of them, and then we're meeting weekly to review them. So a lot of interest so far.
Okay. Could you forward a copy of the solicitations? I want to make sure that everybody in my county knows about it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Hope, can you do that, please?
Yes.
Great.
Have you used the farm bureaus as a conduit for getting information out?
We certainly have in the past. I don't recall whether this is. I don't recall who was sort of on the hook. I don't recall our entire outreach plan, but if we'll double check to make sure that they've gotten it.
Because you have a Delta Farm Bureau caucus, and that's kind of loose knit, but you certainly have farm bureaus in all the respective counties, and I know they are, they're very good conduits for getting information out to growers, to landowners, to folks throughout the counties, but certainly in the Delta. So
I'm pretty certain they're on our listserv as well. So
okay, but it might be worth a follow-up again, as it sounds like you're not having difficulty in garnering applications thus far, but I think it would be a good again, good outlet to send it through. Okay, I see several hands here. Do you have anything else? Was that your?
I'm good for, please.
Okay, so I have Deborah and then Mitch and Sandy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to recognize that in working with the Delta stakeholder group that we've been working so closely with, that there was really, somebody made a comment that really struck me, and there was wide agreement with it that, this has not necessarily been an easy thing to pull together. And there was recognition that this wouldn't have even been possible several years ago. And the ability for these different interests to come together and develop a program like this that really meets state and agricultural interests has been wonderful. And that we were able to do that, and that the community, the Delta community is in a place where we can have these partnerships and really be in this productive space is just something I wanted to highlight and recognize because it's really wonderful. And it just, as Campbell mentioned, I think these conversations that we're having one-on-one with the individual growers will just amplify that even further.
Great. Thanks, Deborah, for those comments. Okay, Mitch?
Yes, I just wanted to ask Ms. Miller if she could also send me the information as well.
Certainly, I can do that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Probably to all the county supervisors would make sense.
Again, it could be shared with the agricultural commissioners. Maybe that's part of your stakeholder group, but again, they have immediate contact with, again, folks and certainly are looking at good farming practices and your UC advisors for several of the counties, the ag extension. So again, there's different methods of reaching out to folks. So, okay, Sandy, go ahead.
This is, I mean, getting those 30 in so quickly, that's like phenomenal.
Yeah.
So way to go,
Yes.
you guys. That's really, really incredible. I guess my question is, it sounds like this is the first time this program has been implemented. Is that correct? And is there a talk of, I mean, if the demand, I mean, obviously there's a lot of demand. Could it become a longer term program? Just, I mean, the costs for the setup cost and the landowner outreach is intensive and takes a lot of capacity. And so I just wonder about the opportunity to talk with the department and others about potentially broaching the issue of like options for longer contracts or multi-year contracts and things like that, because if there's landowner interest, like obviously you don't want to, if that's going to cause a ruckus, so we don't want to do it. But if that's coming through, it'd be interesting to have those conversations with the department, because they're just, with the surplus right now, they're the DWR sitting on so much money, and if this is actually proving to be effective, it seems really exciting, and I'd be interested in sort of those kinds of lessons learned that you guys are hearing about as you're out in the field.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. I have to say, just standing the program up has been so all-consuming that we haven't talked too much. I mean, truly, it is a pilot in the sense that we're really trying to discern what are the practices that are really effective and can actually result in real savings for the money invested, and trying to then have that inform what a future program would look like. But we haven't talked a lot about, when we would stand that program up and what is our expectation of, trying to identify funding for a program long-term. But one other thing I will add is that there was a similar program back in 1993. And there was some things that were learned, but apparently, that was a long time ago, and all the institutional memory has been lost. So, one of the things that we want to try to do is make sure that, we preserve this into the future, so that if, by some stroke of luck, we go through a wet period for a while, all this information will be around. But I think we do need to focus on that a little bit more and start to think about, okay, this program is definitely going to give us information. What's our thinking about next steps, and how do we think about existing funding sources to set up in the event that this drought persists?
Yes, Dolly, go ahead. Thanks, Ed.
Thank you. Campbell, on that note and on Sandy's comments, I think this is really a fabulous program to start exploring with, because I don't see a drought ending anytime soon. While we might get relief, I think this is kind of the way of the West for the time being. Has any other Western states around us done similar programs? And is there knowledge we can share with them or knowledge they can share with us? So we all don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, certainly. Some of the components of this, particularly around pricing, were informed by other drought response programs that DWR runs in California and other parts. But obviously, the Delta is always such a unique and more complex animal that warranted the separate program. In other states, I'm not aware, but certainly, trying to build off the programs that exist within the state elsewhere.
Well, the other reason, I mean, obviously not just for the waters sake and our environment's sake. But again, I think, and we'll talk about this a little bit more with the strategic plan, but many moons ago, when I first came on this Conservancy, one of the ideas we had talked about then was really the Conservancy being a leader in these very big conversations. And again, kudos to you and your staff, both present and those who have moved on, or like Deborah will be moving on soon, because I think the Conservancy has made a concerted effort to be a player in these bigger discussions, no matter what our staff limitations have been. And as we move forward in this program and with carbon offset, et cetera, I just think it behooves us to remind the public that 10 years ago, we didn't know that this Conservancy whether it would be in existence or what shape it would be in, but being a leader in these conversations, I think, is helpful, and helps the state recognize the importance we have here in the Delta. So
Right.
Kudos.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dolly. Anyone else? Well, sounds like a lot of excitement, but a lot of work, and I trust that you'll be reaching out to Sandy and I. It sounds like we're going to have some work to do in between the board meetings with our executive director on this, but again, it's good work and good to have the opportunity. So, all right, let me ask for James, anyone on the phone?
No hands raised currently.
Okay.
No comment.
Other comments? All right, this is a update and more to come, so thank you. Let's keep moving then down our agenda to item number 9, which is the invasive species coordination update, and overview to be provided by Rachel. Rachel, to you.
Hello, I have a brief presentation that will highlight some of the points from my staff report as well as expand on a few of them. So good morning, Chair Anatoli and board members. My name is Rachel Wigginton, and I am the Senior Environmental Scientist at the Delta Conservancy. And I also facilitate the Delta Interagency Invasive Species Coordination Team. And I'm really excited today to get the chance to talk with all of you about some of the work the Conservancy has been supporting to improve the region's ability to effectively detect and respond to new invasive species in the Delta. So the DISC team was formed in 2013 to bring together groups working in the Delta to detect, prevent, and manage invasive species or restore invaded habitats. Conservancy staff facilitate the group along with co-chairs from the Delta Stewardship Council, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the Department of Water Resources. This facilitation role includes activities like convening the quarterly team meetings, coordinating working groups, leading the planning of the biennial Delta Invasive Species Symposium, and also working with the co-chairs to plan quarterly meetings and vision group goals. The DISC team aims to meet these goals through several main types of activities. First, we exchange information, usually through our quarterly meetings. We also work together to leverage funding, often in support of fulfilling research or management needs that we have identified. And one such need identified by the DISC team is early detection and rapid response to new invasive species, commonly referred to as EDRR. Early detection and rapid response are defined as a coordinated set of actions that aim to eradicate potential invasive species before they can cause harm. And this can be really well visualized using the classic invasion curve, which I'm going to show you on the graphic to the right. So on the y-axis here, you have the spatial extent of the invasive species, and on the x-axis, you have time. During the colonization phase, the spatial extent of the invader is really limited, which makes eradication easier and more cost-effective. However, detecting species at these low levels can be kind of challenging. During the establishment phase, the invader covers more area and eradication is still possible, but it takes more time and a greater commitment of resources. Finally, during the phase of spread, and this is usually when public awareness actually begins, managers shift their focus from eradication to long-term maintenance. So when we talk about early detection and rapid response, we're really talking about all the actions that we as a group can take in the highlighted time zone to eradicate species before they cause harm to the system. In order to facilitate an effective response to new invaders, a working group of the DISC team, which was facilitated by the Conservancy staff, met about every other month from December 2020 to August 2021 to draft a Delta EDRR framework. And this framework is based strongly on the national EDRR framework put forward by the Department of the Interior in 2016. The draft framework consists of 4 main elements: preparedness, early detection, rapid assessment, and rapid response. I just want to note that prevention activities in this case exist outside the EDRR process, but are really important to informing it. So in addition to having an agreed upon framework, the working group quickly realized that we needed all the parts of the EDRR process to function well by providing adequate information to decision makers in a timely and effective manner. To that end, we developed an EDRR coordination table for the Delta that attempted to pull together all the region's existing EDRR programs and resources. First, we worked with the working group of the DISC team, and the members of this team have a lot of expert knowledge about existing programs in the Delta. We augmented this with desktop research, and then we consolidated all of these data into the draft EDRR coordination table. The coordination table organizes different EDRR resources around the 4 main elements of the draft framework. Pulling this data together actually allowed us to make some assessments about the key gaps that exist in our system. For example, we learned that we have many resources in the Delta to support preparedness and early detection, but far fewer resources for rapid assessment and rapid response. Similarly, we found that there were many agencies involved in EDRR activities in the region, but our ability to rapidly assess and respond to new invasions is concentrated in a smaller number of actors. And as this is a draft, we know that this table is not exhaustive, but we're currently working with the broader Delta community to fill in any missing gaps. I've already introduced the basic elements of the framework, and now I'm going to briefly introduce the sub-elements to better demonstrate the full scope of the draft EDRR framework that the DISC team has developed. The first element here is preparedness, and the sub-elements are horizon scanning, planning, and research. The draft framework describes how preparedness really feeds into all the other elements and sub-elements of the framework. The next element is early detection. The sub-elements here are training and monitoring of staff, detection and reporting, and communication and outreach. The third element of the framework is rapid assessment. The sub-elements here are risk screening and risk assessment, where risk screening is a really fast process based on information that we've already gathered and brought together. And risk assessment is a more in-depth process that's often defined by policy documents. We also include risk management and risk communication here. Finally, the rapid response element involves coordination and leadership, containment and quarantine of the invader, treatment and eradication, and then finally, monitoring, adaptive management, and documentation. In the written draft of the framework, each of these elements and sub-elements is accompanied by a definition, an illustrative example that shows how the elements might be applied in the Delta, and a list of key gaps in the region's EDRR capabilities. In December of 2021, the DISC team held the 4th biennial Delta Invasive Species Symposium. The symposium planning took over 7 months and was accomplished by a planning team led by Conservancy staff. The symposium focused on EDRR and attracted over 180 individuals from 90 different organizations. The draft EDRR framework and coordination table were highlighted at the end of the day during an interactive feedback session. And the lineup of talks from the symposium was honestly really great. I thought it was a really cool list and group of speakers. And you can view the symposium recording through the Conservancy's webpage and access the agenda and abstracts on the DISC team's website. As you can see, we've made a lot of progress on coordinating EDRR in the Delta over the past year, and the DISC team is excited to keep things going in the new year. Right now, we're gathering feedback on the draft framework and coordination table. The next DISC team quarterly meeting will take place on February 8th, and we plan to spend about half that meeting gathering specific feedback on the drafts from the different DISC team members. We're then going to call back together the EDRR working group with the ultimate goal of hosting a workshop for managers to build the draft framework using the example of a recent new invader, ribbonweed. So with that, I thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Great, Rachel, thank you. lot of work and leadership on behalf of Conservancy staff and you as well. So thank you for that. So go to board members. Leo, you have a hand up. Go ahead.
I do. Thank you. I'd just like to point out, I think this is extraordinary work. It's very difficult work. And, you know, just like the Delta Drought program, this places the Conservancy in the leading edge of work that is taking place in the Delta. So, Rachel, you're to be congratulated for this, for taking that lead and coordinating all these agencies together. I know from experience that isn't easy. I do have two questions, and one is the prevention aspect. My question is, why is prevention outside the framework that you've established? At least for within the Delta region, the agencies that are part of the team, many of them, the Fish and Game, Fish and Wildlife, or I should say State Fish and Wildlife and Federal Fish and Wildlife, are also responsible for prevention. And shouldn't that be a part? I mean, to prevent is then saves a lot of money and effort down the line with the response and eradication. That was one question. And the second is, even beyond prevention, are there any, is there any thought to looking forward to try and determine what the next likely species are to invade the Delta and anticipate those risks and then be able to prevent it along that line?
Yeah, thank you. I think those are really excellent questions. So first, to your question about prevention. So in the written version of the draft framework, we have sort of element 0 as prevention. So we still define it, and we still include in the coordination table some of the prevention activities. But the way it's sort of defined in the literature and kind of in application in other regions is that prevention activities like those run by the California Department of Food and Ag at those stations that you drive through when you come across the border, if they were to find a species, their goal would just be to like destroy it on site. And that would kind of be the end of it from prevention's perspective. But what we're really hoping to do with establishing the EDRR framework is to be doing some data sharing. So if CDFA does encounter like a spotted lanternfly at one of those checkpoints, they would inform us. So we would know, okay, this has made it into the state at least once, you know, we prevented it, we knocked it out, but we should be on the lookout for it. So in prevention activities often have funding sources that are established, whereas early detection and rapid response generally doesn't have an established fund. That's a state priority that's been talked about for several years now, having an emergency fund that people can apply to actually get the funds to do, once we have early detected a species, they're not just preventing it, but we say we found it on the landscape and it's, you know, reproducing there. We can apply for funds to go in and actually eradicate it. So I definitely think it should be included and incorporated into the overall EDRR process, but just for a couple of technical reasons, mostly trying to identify what really needs funding, which the prevention activities, obviously, they also always need more funding. So that's, I think, addresses the first part of your question. I'm happy to talk about that more. To the second part of your question, so in the first element of the framework, which is preparedness, one of the sub-elements there is horizon scanning, and that speaks directly to what you just talked about. So that's the process of looking at the literature and what we know about different species and the type of environmental conditions that they're able to tolerate, and saying, okay, what do we actually think is very likely to come into the state? And there's a couple of different efforts at the regional and the state level already on that. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is working on a horizon scanning effort, and that's California and you know, the whole region, including other West Coast states. But I've been participating on that advisory committee, and we have asked that they break the results of that horizon scanning work that they have funding to do. So we basically gave them advice, told them some of the species we were worried about and some of the approaches we would like them to take. And they're going to come back to us with a product that is like a list of species that we could potentially be concerned about. And we've asked for that list to be broken down by watersheds as opposed to jurisdictional boundaries, because that'll actually help us. Like in the Delta, we can say, okay, in these watersheds, these are some of the species that we might expect to come in. Similarly, at the state level, there's been some effort around this. So the California Invasive Species Advisory Committee, CISAC, recently reconvened after several years of not meeting. And they have about $5 million that they're trying to allocate funding to different important projects, or they propose to fund certain projects, and then the committee at the state level decides. And horizon scanning and creating a list of species is one of those projects. So that's definitely at the state level, but hopefully at these like regional and state projects, we then in our so bigger than the region, the West Coast and statewide projects, we in the Delta region can then look at those resources and try to identify which species would actually be relevant to our region.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Leo. Thanks, Rachel. Any other questions, comments? If not, I know there'll be more to come. And thank you, Rachel, for your leadership, and certainly the Conservancy staff. James, any public commenters or Hope?
No hands raised currently.
No public comment.
Okay, very good. Okay, with that, if nothing further, we'll hear more, and sounds like a group coming together February 8th, so I trust we'll get another update at the March meeting as to how it's going with our managers and the good work that's been assembled thus far. Okay, let's keep moving then. We've got some action items now. Items 10, 11, and 12 are slated for action. So the first is item 10, consideration of the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Conservancy General Grant Guidelines. So Campbell.
Great, thank you, Chair. And this is an action item, and the staff recommendation is that the board approve the general grant guidelines for the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Conservancy. You'll recall that in October, we brought a draft of this document to the board and requested approval to post it as a public document. That was posted for 30 days, and we did not receive any comments from the public on the document. And there's been a few minor adjustments made to clear up some issues that are listed in the staff report. We can certainly talk through those if need be. You'll recall that these are general grant guidelines that are intended to be used for all funding sources that do not have specific requirements from a bond. So you're aware that we have Prop 1 grant guidelines and Prop 68 grant guidelines because they have very specific elements to those propositions. We are now receiving funding sources, the two that we've talked about today, the $5.2 million for climate restoration and public access, and then the $10 million that we've just brought in for drought response with the Delta Drought Response Pilot Program would fit underneath these grant guidelines. So these are the guidelines that help us to ensure that we can spend those monies effectively. I think the other thing I would just note is that these grant guidelines are patterned after our Proposition 1 grant guidelines, which have just been very helpful or very effective in moving that program, but obviously removing all of the Prop 1 elements. I think at that, I would just leave it for questions. If there are any questions from the board, we're happy to try to respond.
Okay, very good. Thanks, Campbell. Board members, any questions or comments? Yeah, go ahead, Dolly.
Thank you. Campbell, I noticed in the staff
Dolly,
report that,
your audio is breaking up really badly right now.
okay, thank you for that. Is this better?
No, it's actually the same. I'm wondering if you might have to reconnect to the meeting to establish it.
Drats. Okay, I might, I suppose. Okay, I'll try and do that rather quickly.
Yeah, we'll wait for it. Go ahead. Yeah, that's okay. Go ahead. All right. Any other member while we're waiting for Dolly to reconnect so we have better audio?
Sounds like a bad cold.
Hope that's not the case.
Well, if there's no other, I'm sorry, were there other comments?
I don't know. I'm looking. I don't see any other comments. Campbell, keep going.
I think if there's none, I just want to recognize that this is a division of duty issue here. Recognize Deborah's work on taking the Prop 1 grant guidelines and really distilling them down. That was no easy task, as every line in every document has nuance and complexity, and so she's really done a great job of distilling this down. And hopefully, this is really just this is. In an ideal world, we have funding sources beyond just the bonds, which are cyclic. And that's happening right now with general fund from both the climate and the drought response. Hopefully that continues to happen. And these grant guidelines are really designed to be flexible and be accommodating of any of those funding sources that come into the program. So,
Dolly, do you want to try your mic now?
Yeah, let's try this again. Is that
That
better?
sounds much better. Yeah, thank you.
Okay,
Go ahead.
great.
You can sing us a song if you want. Sounds great.
No, you don't want that. Believe me, you want that to be on broken up silence.
Go ahead.
Campbell, I was noticing in the staff report that one of the items of note is to change or at least consider not having a project continue for the 15 years that we have normally had as a basis. And so can you speak to that item? Because I
Sure.
remember when we set this up years ago, that was sort of a drop dead for us at that time.
Yeah, so that is a requirement in state bond law that for capital assets that they have to have a useful life of at least 15 years. That's essentially what we collectively agreed for these programs we would require. What we envision, and I think the drought response program is a really good example of that, is that we're in some cases we're not funding capital assets. So here we're funding a farmer to shift from corn to winter wheat, which reduces water for 1 year. So in that instance, a 15 requirement just isn't appropriate. So that's the idea is we want to have it there where it's appropriate. If we are funding a capital asset with general fund and or bond funding, this is mostly going to be general fund and other funding sources, we would still want to have that requirement, ensure that anything we're funding has a useful life of at least 15 years. But again, expecting that some things will not be capital assets, trying to create language that allows us to do both.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that explanation.
Yeah, and to further clarify that, we could have something that trips a capital asset definition, but isn't a capital asset that would be something that would necessarily be maintained for 15 years. So certain levels of, earthwork or things like that. But if it's on take again the drought response program, if people were doing things, we don't anticipate it in this program, but if things were a little bit more dramatic, it could trip a capital asset definition, but wouldn't be something that we would necessarily want, say, a grantee to have to commit to 15 years of maintenance, because it just wouldn't make sense for their operations. And we also didn't want to block ourselves into 15 years. If it is a capital asset and we do want a maintenance period, maybe we think 20 is a better option. So we wanted to have that flexibility to be maybe less stringent, but also to be more stringent where we feel it's appropriate.
Okay, great. Thank you both. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, thank you, Don. Okay, Jim Provenza, go ahead.
Yeah, and I realize these are general grant guidelines, but one of the sources of revenue is money for climate. And in looking at the 11 categories of funding, I'm sure climate could fit in there, but should we call out climate a little bit more specifically since there's grant money for this purpose?
Deborah, can I put that one to you?
I think I need you to clarify, if you would, your comment a little bit. So to call it out in what way? What are you?
Well, I'm reading the staff report about some of the sources of money that we're trying to deal with, and one of those is the money for climate. And then looking in the general guidelines of what the Conservancy will consider funding, there's the 11 categories on pages 2 to 3. And nothing specifically mentions climate. I mean, I guess you could fit it into one of these categories, but my question was, should we just call it out a little more specifically?
I understand. So thank you. That helps. So those 11 categories are taken from statute. So that is how we were focusing on. Now, it certainly doesn't preclude us from calling climate out within one of those more specifically to highlight it in the general grant guidelines. We were envisioning that it would nest under those, but we can certainly call it out if that's the preference.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful because people looking, for money for climate aren't necessarily familiar with all the details of our conservancy and so forth. So if it's actually mentioned in the guidelines somewhere, I think it's helpful.
We can certainly do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say I agree with Supervisor Provenza, particularly since we have our carbon projects that are so important to the Delta.
Okay, good comments.
Yeah, I think hopefully we can, the motion could actually include adjusting that language and moving forward.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Leo.
Thank you.
Any other board member before I go to any public comment? Anyone else? All right, so James or Hope, do we have any public comment?
No hands raised.
No public comment.
All right, very good. Okay, then I'll bring it back to the board for any further discussion and or a motion. And we've heard the comments. It sounds like that calling out of the climate and reference to some of the guidelines here was acceptable to folks. So, all right, with that, what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll move item 10.
I'll second.
So for clarity, item 10 is a motion to adopt it as presented. So we would, if you are comfortable and it's the board's pleasure to move it with that caveat of adding the climate information, we would need something specific to that.
All right, I move it with the addition of the climate action information presented.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, Nicole, you have your hand up.
Yeah,
Council's going to weigh in here.
Yeah, I just want to be clear that the motion leaves staff with the flexibility to figure out how to best reflect that in the revised guidelines, reflect the climate change focus, so that it's consistent with the other statutory limitations. So
That's what Karen said, right?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
That's good. Good. Thanks, Nicole. Appreciate that guidance. So, all right. So it's understood. Motion is clear. Jessica, you have the motion.
I do. Could you repeat who did the second? Was that you, Jim?
That was Leo.
Leo. Sorry, I was looking down. I didn't recognize the voice. Okay, let's take a vote.
Okay. With that, then nothing further. Go ahead and call the roll. Thanks.
Chair Natoli.
Aye.
Vice Chair Matsumoto, excuse me.
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchoff.
Yes.
Supervisor Miller.
Yes.
Supervisor Mashburn.
Yes.
Supervisor Provenza.
Yes.
Board Member Gail Miller.
Hi, so sorry, Mr. Chair. I had to step away. I really apologize. I'm back.
That's okay. Good. And how do you vote?
Aye.
Okay,
Aye.
very good. Thanks, Gail.
Okay, Board Member Cash. Board Member Rustoller, we have as absent. Board Member Witternitz
Yes.
and Board Member Sandoval.
Definitely.
Motion carries with 10 ayes.
Okay, very good. All right. Okay, keep moving through our agenda. Next action item, item 11 is consideration of the 2022-2027 Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta Conservancy Strategic Plan. And I think Deborah gets to cover this for us. So, Deborah.
I do, and my presentation is going to sound somewhat similar to what you just heard from Campbell because these are on parallel paths with the grant guidelines and the strategic plan. So if you'll recall, this is an item that we brought to the board for consideration for a draft to post for public comment back in October. The board approved that draft and we did post it for 30 days and 31 days, I believe, and we did not receive any comments on this as well, or either. So the item before you today, the document before you today is identical to the document that we brought in October. And it will cover 2021 through 2023. or excuse me, I'm looking at the wrong thing, 2022 through 2026. So, and specific to Dolly's comment earlier, in goal 4, objective 4B, that does address that objective is strengthen the Conservancy's role as a collaborative state and community partner. So that is very much reflected in here and something that we will definitely be focusing on in addition to all of our other goals and objectives as we move forward. And then just a reminder that the implementation plan that is the companion document to this, pending, assuming approval from the board, we will be presenting the implementation plan, which is the annual plan for the more near-term tasks that the Conservancy looks to achieve during the year. We will be presenting that to the board in March. Yes, March. So with that, if there are any questions, happy to answer them.
Okay, great. Thanks, Deborah. So, board members, questions, comments? Yes, Leo, go ahead.
Minor comment. On page 6, under Delta Science, it says the Conservancy supports Delta-related science projects through the acquisition of competitive grant funding. I'm just wondering if the words "through the acquisition" should come out. We're not acquiring competitive grant funding, we're using competitive grant funding. Is that correct?
We can do both. So that's so that we can implement our own initiatives by acquiring grant funding from outside entities, such as the US EPA grant that we were talking about previously, or by providing grants to others in order to do that work. So I think that was intended to capture us receiving grants as well.
Yeah, so I'm not going to push it. I just read it and it confused me. That's why I brought it up.
Happy to entertain an edit to that if that's the.
I just say Conservancy supports Delta-related science projects through competitive grant funding, and that includes both sources or all sources. It should include all sources, or you could say through all sources of competitive grant funding.
I suppose through that, if we are going to make a change, we might want to entertain just grant funding and taking competitive out as well, if as it's not always competitive.
Well, then,
although what grant funding is not competitive in one way, shape, or form, right?
It's up to you. I said it's a minor point, but it is something that caught my attention.
Okay. Thanks, Leo. Okay, we'll have that for consideration. I see Sarah, you put your hand up.
Yeah, maybe it's a discussion that I can have offline, but are there alternative sources of funding that we can get that support our Delta Science that are not through grants, contracts, interagency agreements, et cetera? So if we make that a little bit broader, might be more accurate.
I see a lot of heads shaking. Yes.
Yeah,
so yeah. Deborah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion.
So does that seem to work for you, Leo? All right. Sounds like we got there. So any other comments about the strategic plan? All right.
So Don, how would that language, what is
Oh,
that
go ahead.
language going to change?
Go ahead, Dolly.
to?
Yeah, if somebody could read the language, it would do the change then, Deborah or Sarah or whoever.
I don't have the specific language. I wasn't able to take notes on the specific language and track conversation all in one fell swoop. I apologize.
Okay.
Okay.
But I think we can work the language just to be more broad, to be more reflective of grants that we receive and or that we give out, as well as other funding sources. So I would hope the motion might just reflect that same editorial ability on staff's part to finalize that language.
Thanks, Dolly. Nicole shaking her head, so that seems to comport with the motion that's soon to come. So, okay. All right. I don't see any
Somebody
other.
clarify that because I'm writing this down. So
Okay.
we're going to change the language to be more broad where specifically in the document.
To reflect a larger a wider breadth of funding sources.
Is there a certain area?
It's for science, but Jessica, we'll direct you to that when we get to the notes and
Okay.
reference the document.
Okay. All right. We'll come back to motion in just a moment. Let me see if there's any public comment, any hands raised, James?
Hands raised currently.
It's pretty quiet out there in the public land. And then Hope, any?
No public comment.
All right, so noted. Then with the discussion we just had, it sounds like the staff will address the matter, but do we have a motion on the strategic plan?
I'd move the strategic plan with the added language to be developed about our grant funding.
Okay, thanks, Dahlia. And we had a seconder.
I'll second.
All right. We have a motion and a second, and Jessica will get the Campbell and Deborah and Sarah will help you with all that. And
Okay.
fairly simple. Okay.
I have a motion from Board Member Sandoval, second from Board Member Provenza. How do you vote, Chair Natoli?
Aye.
Vice Chair Matsumoto?
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchoff?
Yes.
And Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
And Supervisor Mashburn? Mitch, are you there? Are you on mute? There you go. You're on mute.
No, he's unmuted, but for some reason his mic isn't working. It looks like.
Thumbs up, Mitch.
Nicole, can I
There you
accept a
go.
thumbs up? There we go.
We got the visual.
Supervisor Provenza,
Yes.
Board Member Miller,
Aye.
and Board Member Cash.
Aye.
I have Board Member Rustoller absent, Board Member Winternitz,
Aye.
and Board Member Sandoval.
Aye.
We have 10 ayes, the vote carries. Motion carries.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. We will make this available, sorry. We will make the revised strategic plan. It will be posted on our website.
Good. Thank you, Deborah. And thanks, Leo, for your suggestion. And with that, then we've got the strategic plan adopted and on our way to a lot of work that's embodied in that. So let's move to our final action item. And then we have a number of reports. So item 12, which is consideration of the amendment to the budget scope in terms of Proposition 1 Ecosystem Restoration and Water Quality Grant Program Agreement for the Knightsen Wetland Restoration and Flood Protection Project. And I believe, I don't know, Campbell, if you're gonna make an introductory, I think Shelley's gonna do the presentation, so.
Yep, I think this is all Shelley's, so take it away, Shelley. Shelley, are you muted?
There you go.
I was. I really appreciate the like big "you are muted" sign that comes up on Zoom. Thank you, Chair Nadoli.
Yes.
Shelley Temple King presenting agenda item 12, which is the request for the consideration of an amendment to the Knightsen Wetland Restoration and Flood Protection Project. The staff report for this amendment is on page 87 of the board packet. This agenda item presents a request to extend the grant funding term, increase the total budget, and change the scope of work of the grant agreement. This is the second amendment to the project. Staff recommends that the board approve the extended funding term, increased budget, and changes to the scope of work as explained in this report. For some background, in April of 2018, as part of cycle 3 of the Proposition 1 Ecosystem Restoration and Water Quality Grant Program, the board approved the award of grant funds to the Knightsen Wetland Restoration and Flood Protection Project. The project is a planning project to identify and further develop a preferred alternative from a range of conceptual alternatives on a 645-acre property in an unincorporated area near the community of Knightsen in East Contra Costa County. In the implementation phase, this project will yield habitat restoration, water quality benefits, recreational features, and flood protection. On May 27th of 2020, an amendment to the project's term, scope, and budget to accommodate additional community outreach and hydrologic analysis to address community concerns and questions was approved by the board. With that amendment, the budget was augmented by $10,000. In this amendment, the grantee is requesting an addition of $200,000 to the grant award to accommodate additional community engagement and hydraulic and hydrologic modeling. Activities funded by this budget include modeling, outreach planning, presentation development, meeting facilitation, outreach coordination, and communications support. The grantee requests a term extension of 1 year from November 2022 to November 2023. The grantee's request for a term extension is the result of several factors: additional work required to address concerns raised by the Knightsen Town Community Services District, outreach delays due to COVID meeting restrictions, and engineering delays due to wildfire impacts on the project team. Approval of this amendment will provide resources for the grantee to address the Knightsen Town Community Service District's concerns regarding this planning project to advance to implementation. The environmental benefits of project implementation are significant through the creation of tidal marsh, seasonal wetland, alkali meadow, oak savanna, interior dune, and grassland habitats. The risks associated with not approving this amendment are that this planning project will not be able to continue to implementation to realize the benefits of the investments the numerous partners have made thus far. Staff feels strongly that this project should continue and are confident that the approval of this amendment will not fundamentally change the merit of the project as it was evaluated in the competitive review process. So with that, I remake the recommendation that the board approve the extended funding term, increased budget, and changes to the scope of work as explained in the report.
Thanks, Shelley. I see Karen has a, go ahead, Karen.
Hi, thanks, Shelley. I'm confused, but that happens easily these days. So the original award amount was $1.235 million. They asked for 10,000 more, and now they need 200,000 more. So it said amended request amount is 1.435 million, but it is the 10 grand, 10 grand. Shouldn't that be the original amount awarded was 1.235. Subsequently, it was 1.245. And now an amended request is 190, or is that 10,000 being incorporated into the 200,000?
That's a really good question, Karen. And I'm noticing that the way that we word that on the staff report is just going to create confusion every time there's a second or third amendment. The original award was 1.225.
Okay.
And so the first amendment brought it to 1.235.
Well, perhaps in the future, you can put original award, what it was, semicolon, amended award, and the date, and then this award. So I just think it's clearer if you wouldn't mind doing it that way. And I know you need to take public comment and or others, but when it's appropriate, I'll move this item.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for that suggestion. I agree that the way it's laid out right now is really confusing.
Thanks, Shelley. Okay, thanks, Karen. All right, let me go to any other board member first. Anyone else wish to weigh in on this item? Any other hands? Okay, so we'll go to James and Hope and see if we have any.
No public hands raised.
And no public comment.
All right, with that,
Sorry,
then,
Chair Natoli, a hand just went up, so.
okay, very good. All right, our first commenter of the day. So we'll go ahead and open it up, and please identify yourself and your comments, please.
Abigail, you should be able to speak now.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, I cannot turn on my video, but that's okay. You can look at owls.
Yes, I said we see a video with the burrowing owls, I think.
Yes, so that's fine. You can look at that. My name is Abigail Fateman. I'm the executive director of the East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy, and we are the project applicant and proponent for this for the Knightsen Wetland Restoration Project. And I just wanted to extend my appreciation to Delta Conservancy staff who have been working with myself and the project team to navigate some unanticipated hiccups in the project timeline. And so I just wanted to acknowledge Shelley and Campbell and others and appreciate the work that they've put into this project, supporting us and helping guide us through this process.
Great. Thank you, Abigail, for your efforts as well. And we appreciate your kind comments this morning. And if there's nothing further from you, is there any other member of the public wishing to weigh in?
No, their hands raised.
Looks like Dolly has her hand up.
Yeah, I see it. I'm going to go back up. Thanks, Campbell. Okay, so Karen wanted to make a motion. Dolly, you comments or questions?
I do have a question. I'm sorry I didn't jump on earlier. Shelley, one of the statements in the staff report for this additional money is talking about 2020, 2021 being a drought year, and hopefully there'll be a more typical rain year 2021, 22, so that questions can be addressed in terms of the water table and groundwater and surface water. If we have another drought year as it's looking to be, as we've had in the last few years, how is that going to affect the project?
I actually am going to ask Abby to speak to that because I think she can do it more clearly than I could.
Great, thank you.
Abigail, go ahead if you're still on the line.
All right, thanks for the question. We have been collecting data for a number of years, and really the more data we have, the better feel we have for what's going on. There are a number of changes that are happening, I guess, regardless of what we see with the weather pattern. So at the time that we were working with Delta Conservancy staff to develop this proposal, we were thinking, maybe this won't be a drought year as it was raining sort of nonstop at the end of December. What we also learned was that our ag producer who is working on site decided not to renew their ag lease due to water restrictions of taking water from the Delta to irrigate that the lower 560 acres of the property. So we're also in the process of removing irrigation from the property that will also affect potentially how our groundwater modeling works and will better reflect what the conditions will be on site in the future in a restored, excuse me, in a restored scenario. So I don't anticipate this being an ongoing waiting for a huge rain year. It really is an opportunity to collect as much information as possible while we are moving through other processes like outreach to get to the finish line on the final design. I'm happy to answer your questions. I don't know if that answers your question.
That does, and I think taking a look at the trends as well as removing some of the irrigation there now, I think you have answered my question. Thanks much, Abby.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Dolly, for the question. Thanks, Abby, for responding. Anyone else? Okay, if not, then we'll go back to Karen. Karen, you wanted to?
Thank you. And I need to pull the language up that you so kindly have there. I move that the board approve an amendment to the grant agreement with East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy for Prop 1-1709 to award an additional $200,000 in funding for hydraulic and hydrologic modeling and community outreach, and to extend the grant term to November 30, 2023.
I'll second that.
Okay. Moved by Mitroff and seconded by Provenza.
Got it. And Chair Natoli, how do you vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Matsumoto?
Yes.
Supervisor Mitroff?
Yes.
Supervisor Miller?
Yes.
Supervisor Mashburn? Mitch, oh, thumbs up. Gotcha. Sorry, I had to look up. Supervisor Provenza?
Aye.
Board Member Miller?
Aye.
Board Member Cash?
Aye.
And Board Member Rustoller is absent. Board Member Winternitz? And Board Member Sandoval?
Yes.
Okay, with 10 ayes, the motion carries.
Very good.
That's
Thank
our
you
last
all.
vote of the day.
Yes, that's the last action item. Okay, now we'll go into our updates and reports. And so first one up is our EcoRestore update. And I think Charlotte Biggs is with us. Charlotte, good morning.
Just note while Charlotte's coming on that Charlotte is just back from maternity leave. So it's she hasn't been able to provide an update for a while, but congratulations and welcome back.
Thank you.
Tell us about the new little one. This is the time. I probably don't have too many pictures yet, but you can share. So go ahead.
Yeah, she's 4 months old and waking up every 4 hours or 2 hours at night. So I'll do my best to make it through this update.
Okay. Congratulations, Charlotte. To you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be back. So yeah, good morning, Chair Natoli and board members. Just have a quick update on EcoRestore to provide you today. I was going to highlight a couple of one recently completed project, and then 2 projects, larger scale projects that we hope will break ground later this year as we move forward. So just to kind of give you a look ahead for the rest of the year. The first project I wanted to highlight is the Dutch Slough effort, tidal restoration project in Contra Costa County. You all might remember from past updates that the Conservancy actually helped fund a portion of this project, the revegetation of the site through Prop 1 grants. So we really appreciate that support going towards this project. And rather than give you the usual update, I actually have a video to share today. We just completed this over the last couple of months, highlighting this project. So I think we have that queued up to go. And then once that's over, I can just highlight a couple of other projects before we wrap up.
Let me bring that up real quick.
Thanks, James.
Dutch Slough is a really important restoration project here in the heart of the Delta. This project has been just under 20 years in the making, and it's a super exciting time to see it come to fruition. The property was acquired in 2003. We were able to break ground and start construction on the project in 2018. We had to move about 2.3 million cubic yards of dirt to bring our elevations up to a tidal marsh elevation. Planted about 25,000 tule plugs grown from an on-site tule nursery and planted something like 40,000 shrubs and trees. We have 5 different breaches to open the project to daily tidal water moving in and out. So having it under tidal influence allows the food source to move into the greater delta and provide food for a larger group of animals. So it took a lot of hard work to get to this point, but all this hard work is going to pay off exponentially for all sorts of critters, wildlife, fish, and for people.
This site is very unique in the Delta because it's not as deeply subsided as most of the Delta islands. And if you want to do tidal marsh, you need elevations that are in the tidal range. The Delta used to be hundreds of thousands of acres of tidal marsh, and almost all of it is gone. And there are so many fish and wildlife species that are dependent on these marsh ecosystems. And these populations have declined precipitously. One of the main goals of this project is to restore fish and wildlife habitat. And there's a whole host of native fish species that will benefit from all of the food resources that are generated in the marsh and exported from the marsh into the larger delta.
There's a salmon run that uses Marsh Creek that is going to benefit greatly from our project. Now that the mouth of Marsh Creek has been rerouted through the tidal marsh, there's much more of a good home for these young salmon. They have places they can come and hide in our marsh, and it's a really productive environment. There should be plenty of food for them to eat so they can grow strong and be prepared for their trip out to the ocean.
Dutch Slough is a perfect example of a multi-benefit project because with one project we are restoring critical freshwater tidal wetlands, we are improving flood protection for nearby Oakley, we are creating public access and recreation and greater climate resiliency for the Delta.
We've worked with DWR since about 1999 to fulfill a long-term dream of creating access to the Delta, which there's a short supply of. This project, combined with the Big Break Park just to the west, will add an additional 3.5 miles of trails around the exterior of the Emerson property. This gives Oakley residents and East County residents an opportunity to really engage with the Delta itself, which is highly unusual. There really isn't much out here.
This project is going to tell us a lot about how to build restoration projects in the future and how to best manage them. And we have a lot of exciting research going on that's going to help inform a lot of those decisions for us going forward. So not only for this project, but for the region and, you know, maybe even nationally or globally.
As climate change accelerates, we need to do more to protect our people and communities, but also our natural places and the fish and wildlife that rely on them. The more that we can actually help our fish and wildlife and not have to manage species on the brink, the better off we are to build our infrastructure, maintain our infrastructure, manage our water systems as we need to provide reliable water for cities and towns across the state. I am so proud of the work that the Department of Water Resources and its partners have done on Dutch Slough. These projects are complicated and they take a long time, but they are tremendously meaningful to the future of California and our natural environment.
It's really exciting to be a part of this project where we've built a place that we can return to and that will be great for the local public, all the local wildlife, and a place that we know will have a really positive impact on the Delta.
Thank you, Charlotte, for sharing the movie clip and a lot of stars there, and certainly, again, it's quite an accomplishment, many years in the making.
Yeah, star-studded, right? You heard Katie right in the beginning of the video mention that the tule planting and the shrubs that were planted. And just to highlight again, that is what the Conservancy helped fund through Prop 1. So it's a big portion of the project. We're really proud of this effort. It's about 1,200 acres, and so pretty big project to get in the ground and get functioning.
So I just want to just very quickly chime in. I started working in this system in 1999, and I remember conversations with John Kane back then, sort of conceptualizing this project. It is a fantastic project, but it also is kind of a tough reminder of how hard it is to get these projects done, these big projects. This one's been 20 years in the making, so it's great to see it come to fruition, but it's also a good reminder that this is not easy work for all of us. So, and I'm glad we could contribute in some way.
Great, thanks, Kevin.
Yes, good reminder. We hope we're learning more and getting to move a little faster, but it does, it is so complicated and takes a very long time. So the only other thing I would mention on Dutch Slough is that we do own an adjacent property. So this is, we're calling what we just completed phase 1. There's an adjacent property about 500 acres known as the Burroughs Tract. And so we're going to be starting work on that next. We're hoping that that will be a tidal wetland as well, about 200 acres or so, and then some upland riparian habitat. So it'll actually, hopefully in the long term, that project we just showed, we'll have another project right next door. We're working with the city of Oakley, as we mentioned in the video, to do a loop trail, and that loop trail is going to connect to existing trails, which is great for recreation and access in the Delta. We're really proud of that portion of the project. So more to come on those fronts, but we're excited to get this initial phase completed. I wanted to see if there were any other questions on that before I moved on to just 2 other projects I was going to highlight.
Okay, any other comments? I assume Karen's pretty familiar, as is, I know, Diane Burgess with this project.
Yeah.
Again, kudos to all involved, and thank you for your work, Charlotte, but certainly folks going back to Campbell's early days and coming right forward to the present. So looks like, real good start there with more work to come in that same vicinity. All right, I don't see any other questions or comments, Charlotte, so proceed, go ahead.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to quickly touch base on 2 other of our big projects in planning that that I've been updating you on sort of over the past year or so. The first one is the Fremont Weir Big Notch effort at the Fremont Weir and the Yolo bypass. So we are hoping to begin construction on that project this coming May. We have all of our permits in hand on that effort, and so we're working through construction bids and those types of details, real estate agreements and things like that. Our design is complete, and we were able to complete site preparation in late 2021 last year. So some tree removal and that sort of thing to get ready for construction this year. I just wanted to know, if we do break ground this May, the new operations at the Fremont Weir would begin in November 2023. So a couple years of construction. And then lastly, the Lookout Slough Tidal Habitat Restoration and Flood Improvement Project. This is our largest tidal wetland restoration project that we have in planning. It's just around 3,000 acres, actually at the southern end of the bypass. So from one end to the other. We have all of our approvals or our permits in hand, but we have one more approval that we need in order to break ground, and that's the Delta Plan Consistency Determination that we need to get in hand before we can start construction on that effort. We were remanded on 2 items. I think a lot of people are aware of that. And so we resubmitted our certification at the end of the year and are hoping to work through that process the beginning of this year. So I'll provide another update on that effort at our next meeting. But that's really where that effort stands. So a bit up in the air right now as to when we would start construction, as we need to get that approval, very important approval. And that was really it. I was going to mention in the Sassoon Marsh, we did complete Arnold Slough, which is a smaller project, tidal restoration project that I know I've been mentioning here as well. It's connected to Bradmore Island, so they're 2 sort of sister projects. So we completed one this summer, and we hope to break ground on Bradmore in the next few months as well, this spring. So I think we'll be doing a virtual groundbreaking on that, which some of you more involved in the Sassoon Marsh might be invited to or can attend. So we want to celebrate that safely. And that's really it for now. So thank you all. Happy to answer any questions you might have on those other projects I mentioned.
Okay. Any comments? I saw Jim Waters has thumbs up on the virtual groundbreaking. I bet you'll be there in person for the groundbreaking. So
yeah, definitely, Jim.
Okay. Any other comments or questions about any other projects that were mentioned here or anything else for Charlotte? Yeah, busy year looks like in 2022 and 2023.
Yes. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Charlotte. Again, congratulations to you on the new addition to the family.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right. Very good. Any members of the public on this item or any comments?
No public comment.
No hands raised.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay, let's then keep moving and down to item 14, the Stewardship Council update, and Amanda Bowl will be doing this.
Great. Can you all hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thank you, Chair Natoli, and good morning, Conservancy Board members. I'm Amanda Bowl, Special Assistant for Planning and Science at the Delta Stewardship Council, and I have a few items I'd like to update you all on today. First, the Council's January meeting is tomorrow, in addition to hearing updates on internal efforts, including our environmental justice issue paper, which I'll discuss in a moment, and our annual report. The Council will hear updates from the Delta Conveyance team and the Delta Water Master. And I also want to note that Council member Virginia Medueno was elected Vice Chair of the Council at its December meeting. Ms. Medueno is a gubernatorial appointee to the Council, and she resides in the Central Valley town of Riverbank, and previously served as the chair of the Boating and Waterways Commission. So we're glad to have Ms. Medueno on the council and serving as vice chair. And as Charlotte mentioned, on December 30th, the Department of Water Resources refiled its certification of consistency for Lookout Slough. The deadline to appeal the certification is this Monday, January 31st. To date, no appeals have been submitted, but we still have a few days to go. And I believe we'll send out a listserv announcement following once we get to that deadline. Monday, January 31st is also the day of the inaugural Delta Plan Interagency Implementation Committee Restoration Subcommittee meeting. The purpose of the subcommittee, which is a recommendation in the proposed Delta Plan Chapter 4 amendment, is to identify and implement strategies for reducing barriers to landscape scale restoration and increase estuary-wide restoration coordination. The focus of this first meeting is to create a common understanding of existing restoration efforts and to discuss the subcommittee's vision and goals. And we've been working very closely with Campbell and Rachel on this effort, and we're looking forward to continuing to partner with the Conservancy as this subcommittee and its work moves forward. Also next week, the Delta Science Program is hosting a virtual symposium to explore how immediate and long-term climate change considerations are integrated into the planning and implementation of restoration projects in the Delta. The symposium will focus on the implementation and science of restoration, and then also the social and political dimensions that shape projects. The symposium is February 2nd and 3rd. There's still time to register, and more information is available on the Council's website. Finally, just want to say a few words about the Council's effort to draft an environmental justice white paper or issue paper. The Council's 2019 5-year review of the Delta Plan identified environmental justice, or EJ, as a key emerging issue and recommended that staff prepare an issue paper to investigate the potential need for additional strategies or responses within the Delta Plan to address disadvantaged communities and EJ. So the Council's objective with this effort is threefold. First, to build a network of community leaders and organizations to inform and support the Council's EJ work. 2, to identify environmental justice issues within the Delta watershed and areas that use Delta water. And finally, to identify options to address those issues. We began this process in 2021, but are really working in earnest with our community partners in 2022 to dive into the issues and to identify recommendations to take to the Council. And right now we're anticipating presenting the issue paper with its recommendations to the Council in late this year, early next year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about anything I've mentioned. Also happy to discuss the EJ white paper in more detail at a future Conservancy meeting if that's of interest to the board.
Great, thanks, Amanda. Appreciate the update. Any questions or comments regarding anything that Amanda reported on or any of the other Council activities? Seeing the Amanda, so you were very concise and appreciated, and was certainly, I think, would welcome an update on the environmental justice work as it progresses throughout the calendar year. All right, any public comments on this, either callers or commenters?
No public comment.
No hands raised.
Okay, thanks, Amanda. Appreciate it. And we'll see you tomorrow. All righty, very good. Okay, next item, we're going to go to item 15, which is the Delta Protection Commission update. And Eric's with us. Eric, good morning.
Great. Thank you, Chair Natoli and board members. Eric Vink here. I'll just report on a few items that were featured in our commission meeting, which was held last Thursday, January 20th. The first and most significantly is that our commission adopted the Great California Delta Trail Master Plan, which I like to remind people is really more of a strategic plan about stitching together trail segments to connect the San Francisco Bay Trail in eastern Contra Costa County with the Sacramento River trails as they exist in both the city of Sacramento and the city of West Sacramento. And this has been a long gestating effort for the commission going back to 2006 legislation. The master plan is it really is a strategic plan that sets the table for local designations of trail segments, and we hope that ultimately we can help to stitch all those together into something that approximates a continuous recreational trail, either on land or on water throughout the Delta region. The commission also received an update, and I think this will be of interest to all of you, on the State Lands Commission program for removing abandoned and derelict commercial vessels, what they call commercial vessels. And these are working craft, not recreational boats, but working craft that are orphaned in the sense that they do not have a dedicated funding source for their removal. There are tens of these documented throughout the Delta. That earlier documentation effort probably missed some, and they're costly to remove. Removing recreational craft is a relatively simple endeavor, removing these commercial crafts. Some of them are just enormous in size. And as part of this presentation, the staffer from the State Lands Commission reported on a removal of a commercial tug from the waterway, kind of a crazy story. It became unmoored, it floated downstream, it was secured, now it's dry docked in Mare Island. It was pulled out of the water, and the land-based deconstruction of that craft will occur. But this is an effort that the State Lands Commission hopes to replicate. This is part of a special budget augmentation that former Assembly member Jim Frazier obtained in the current fiscal year budget. It's a $12 million program. State Lands Commission is just about prepared to kick off the work in earnest on that. We look forward to hearing more about their progress. We also appreciated the report that Campbell made on the Delta Drought Response Program, and it's great to hear about that participation that's been received so far from Delta farmers. We welcome some new staff. I'm very thrilled about that. We've been a little shorthanded, and I'm sorry to hear about Deborah's retirement, but at the same time, really thrilled for her. And but we're approaching full staffing, which is always a great place to be operating from. And then finally, the commission approved a letter on the Delta Stewardship Council appeal regulations. This is kind of an arcane matter, but one that we do get involved with on the commission when certifications of consistency, projects that require Delta Plan certification are appealed, and then the whole proceeding that occurs at the Stewardship Council once a certification of consistency is appealed. So our commission approved comments on those appeal regulations, and if anyone is interested in those appeal regulations, the council is seeking comments on those up until March 7th. And that's all I have to report, Mr. Chair.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And as Eric noted, we're approaching full staffing at the Protection Commission, but Eric's also announced his retirement plans for later this year. So he'll be with us for a few more months. But again, Eric, thank you for your ongoing work and certainly coordination with the Conservancy and with the council and other agencies. So any other questions or comments for Eric?
I'd just quickly chime in and thanks, Eric, for all the how to put it, support and help through the years. We run similar organizations and we've depended upon each other quite a bit. And so it's been great working with you, and congratulations to you, and look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you, Campbell. I'll be back for public comment.
We trust that, Eric. All right. Very good. If there's no board member comments, then in addition, I would ask any public comment, Hope or James.
No public comment.
And no hands raised.
All right, Eric, you get off pretty easy this morning. So, but we know come retirement, public comment, you'll be on the spot here. So James will be seeing your raised hand. So, okay, anyway, very good. Thank you, Eric, and appreciate the update on reporting on the commission's activities. Okay, with that, we'll keep moving through. We're almost to the end of the agenda here, but we have another update, and that's our Delta Conveyance update, and Carrie Buckman's with us. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Natoli and members of the board for having me today. So I have a few updates today. The first is that work is proceeding on the draft environmental impact report for Delta Conveyance. We are continuing to plan a release in the middle of this year. We are working on soil investigations. However, there are none planned during the winter. So there's a break during the winter. It's not a great time to go out and do soil investigations. And then the main thing I wanted to talk about today is an update on our proposed project. So when we published our notice of preparation in January of 2020, we identified that our proposed project would be an alternative that had 6,000 CFS capacity and would follow either an alignment through the central delta or along the eastern part of the delta. And as we proceeded with the investigation, we have found that an alternative that we developed during the process, the Bethany alternative was performing better according to some resources. So as a result, we have changed our proposed project in our draft EIR to the Bethany alternative. So I'm not sure how much, I know this is getting into some of the details and I'm not sure how much everyone remembers, but the Bethany alternative, rather than having the tunnel connect to a new southern forebay and then connect to the existing Banks pumping plant, would have a pumping plant from the tunnel directly up into the Bethany Reservoir on the California Aqueduct. So there would be only one pumping plant and it would not need that southern forebay. And because of that lack of southern forebay, we found that it has less of an effect on wetlands and waters, which is particularly important to the Corps as a permitting agency under Section 404. The process there pushes applicants to select the least environmentally damaging practicable alternative, particularly focused on wetlands and waters. And because the Bethany alternative would have less of an effect on wetlands and waters, it does reflect our current thinking about where we would be with the proposed project. CEQA requires us to disclose that in a draft EIR. It says that CEQA case law says that we have to identify what our proposed project would be. So we're analyzing all of the alternatives at the same level of detail. This doesn't mean that we're picking the Bethany alternative. This is just our current thinking, and we're not going to select an alternative or even decide if we're moving forward at all until the environmental compliance process is further along, until after the final EIR, after we've received public comments. At that point, we'll identify a decision about whether we proceed and which alternative. So one other thing I wanted to mention on that is that we've heard some concerns about the South Delta, that selecting the Bethany alternative in some way means that we're abandoning the facilities in the South Delta. So I just wanted to highlight that the Bethany alternative, along with the other alternatives, Central and Eastern, are all using a system called dual conveyance, where we would divert water both in the North and the South. And so they would be used together in conjunction. And so in both cases, we would not be abandoning those South Delta facilities, but continuing to rely on them. And additionally, we would continue to be required to meet the water quality and flow standards in the Delta Water Quality Control Plan. So legally, we would have to continue those activities. So I think those are my updates, Chair Natoli, if there are any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Carrie. Just a quick question. So you had a stakeholders committee that was convened for the past couple of years. My understanding that work has been completed and the committee is no longer meeting. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so the committee was through the Delta Conveyance Design and Construction Authority, and it was formed in September of 2019 to focus on working with the communities to identify ways to avoid effects to local communities during the design and construction. So that committee has been working with the DCA to provide input on conceptual designs. And at this point, the conceptual designs complete isn't the right term, designs will continue to evolve, but the conceptual design process is complete enough that they are moving into the EIR. And so because that process is moving forward, the purpose of that committee has been fulfilled. So the DCA board did vote last week to end that committee with the full recognition that they're continuing public outreach, and they'll likely need other committees for other purposes as they move forward, but this current committee is disbanded.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for the update. Jim Provenza.
Thank you. Just to clarify, is the Bethany alternative at this point the preferred alternative?
We're not calling it the preferred alternative because that does designate a decision and we haven't made a decision. So all we're saying at this point is that we're including it, we're changing in the draft EIR our proposed project from the Central or Eastern to the Bethany alternative. And we've sent a letter to the Corps to that effect as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Any other questions or comments for Carrie? Any additional hands? Hope or James, any?
No public comment.
No hands raised.
Thank you, Carrie, for being with us this morning. Appreciate your ongoing updates, and we'll see you back in March. I'm sure of that. Okay, with that, then that takes us down to our last agenda item, which is discussion regarding our March 23rd meeting and any ideas or suggestions for potential agenda items. Campbell, I don't know if you wanted to make any comments.
Just very quickly, we're in the home stretch. The March meeting will certainly be virtual. And in the future, we'll try to get us out to see something in the field in May or June or July, excuse me. Just three things. We're hoping to have more Prop 68 projects potentially at the March board meeting. As Deborah mentioned, we will be revising the implementation plan, which is our annual plan based on the newly adopted strategic plan, and you will see that. And we've been talking about doing an overview of Delta carbon management, just to update the board on all the activities in that regard. So that's what we have in mind, and certainly open here to any other suggestions from board members about other topics that we'd like to have covered.
Okay. Board members, any other suggestions or thoughts? See anything at this point? I'm sure if something comes up, you'll hear from board members, Campbell. But,
yes.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Oh, Jim, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Jim, you're on mute.
I think I muted myself instead of unmuted myself. Not to suggest we have to have a specific agenda item right now, but I would like to have a continued emphasis on carbon reduction and anything that the Conservancy can do in that area. So if we could have periodic updates there and perhaps develop some information that can help all of us in that area. I know it's an important emphasis in our county right now, and whatever the Conservancy can do to help. But I'd like to have a continued discussion on that.
Absolutely. My favorite topic.
Great.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jim. Anybody else? Okay. All right. If not, then we're down, I guess, one more opportunity for public comment on any items on, I guess, not on the agenda or just comments in general. So, James, last call.
I don't see any hands currently, but somebody could press a button last minute. You never know.
I know. Very good. Thanks for your assistance too, James, and hope both of you. Okay. Seeing none, then we're to adjournment right at 11:30. And thank you all for your patience, your participation, and to our staff. Thank you very much for all the reports and good work. And we'll see you all back on March 23rd. So bye, everybody. We're adjourned.
See you then.
Thank you, everyone.
All.